Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Doug Weinstein, current steward of the Diamond Bakery Legacy. And this is the Diamond Bakery in Los Angeles. So, welcome, Doug. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you, Deb.
And so, tell me, what is the Diamond Bakery and why are you steward of it?
Well, Diamond Bakery has been around for 76 years. It was started in 1946 as the Fairfax Bakery. It was owned for about 10 years by a gentleman, and Seagal is his last name, which happens to be my mother's matriarchal name, Seagal, which I thought was pretty cool. He passed it on to a gentleman that worked for him who owned it for about 10 years. And then there was two couples, the Rubensteins and the Lotmans. Three of the four were Holocaust survivors. They had settled in Detroit. They learned how to bake, or they baked there together. They moved here and started a bakery in Boyle Heights, and then ended up moving it to this location on Fairfax. It had already been called Diamond Bakery at that point. So they took it over, and they had it for 60 years. Roughly 60 years. And then in 2019, they decided to close. The son of those two couples, one of the sons of those two couples decided to close, and the employees wouldn't let it happen. They said, "You can close, but we're coming back." So they took over, and then COVID hit. And then I came in February of 21 to get a cheese pocket and a corn rye, and found out they were going to close in a couple of months. And Shonda is what comes to mind. It couldn't happen. So I told the story to a few people, raised a little bit of money, and took over. So I'm technically the owner, but I don't really own Diamond Bakery. It's really the 76 years of family traditions that have come here that really make up the character of Diamond Bakery, and I'm just the one that's perpetuating that for the time being.
And so, what makes it so special? I mean, obviously the history, but let's talk about the food.
Yeah, let's talk about the food. Why not? Well, this type of Jewish style baking is reminiscent of Eastern European, German, and Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, Hungarian. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's old school style baking. There's very few places. There used to be 5 on this street. Now we're the only one, and then there's Cantor's that has a bakery in it. So the formulas and the processes that produce the product it's just really good. I mean, the babkas, the racetrack, the Russian coffee cake, the Rugelach, the black and white cookies, the Mandelbrot. I mean, there's somebody every day that says, "I drove 70 miles to get 3 pounds of Mandelbrot," or "I flew in from Detroit, took a 2-hour layover to come and get the corn rye." We're famous for the corn rye. So it's just really good. Tastes good, looks good. They've done a really great job, and we've maintained that level of quality.
Well, you say Mandelbrot, and that was my grandmother who was from Detroit. That was her big thing, and I can't even hear the word without tasting it in my head.
Right.
So,
did you make it with her?
I did when I was younger. Yes.
That's
and
awesome.
And the recipe is in the file, on a piece of paper in her handwriting. I'm pretty either her handwriting or my mom's handwriting writing it down. But those are right. Those family recipes, how it gets passed on is through that,
Right.
This history.
L'Adore Vado, I call it.
L'Adore Vado.
From generation to baking, from generation to generation through baking. That's right.
And so where did your love of baking come from? Or how did you become you?
How did
I guess
I
is the
become
better
me?
question.
So when when I was young, I was an avid eater. I love to eat. My mom cooked a lot. My parents are from South America, so all of my relatives were foreigners. My Tia Leah in New York, and Tia Martha, and all of my aunts were cooks. And so Tia Leah, who was married to Tio Bigote, he had a mustache, so we called him Tio Bigote because he would tickle us with it. He owned a candy store in Queens. Old school, sawdust, wood floors, all the classic licorices and everything, Swedish fish, the whole 9 yards. And I just remember as a kid when we would go visit, it was Willy Wonka, right? It was awesome. And I just loved all of that, plus eating the candy. And then later in life, I like to cook. My Aunt Leah would come out and she would bring her ravioli press, and she would make fresh raviolis, and she would make berenjena, which is like baba ganoush, eggplant stuff. And she would just cook, and I would cook with her because I would get to eat. My Aunt B, who was an avid baker, and her mom, Grandma Ida, that's from my mother's side, the Seagulls, great bakers. When I was little, I would go visit, and there was always tins of shortbread, mandelbrot, rugelach, honey cake, always in the freezer, and always something to eat. I just loved it. And one time I wanted a pastrami sandwich from the place at the corner, and I didn't have any money, so I offered to sweep the floors, wipe the tables, and wash the windows in exchange. That became a thing. He asked me if I wanted to learn how to make pizza dough. I did. By the time I was 13, I was spinning pizzas the old-fashioned way, and I just got the bug, and I loved it.
And now, years later, you are the steward of this. So what is your favorite thing to make as a baker?
As a baker, I've really enjoyed lately. I was a pastry chef, by the way, at the Century Plaza Hotel. I did my apprenticeship right out of high school. That's when I found out about Diamond Bakery. It was one of the benchmark places that I would go to make sure I was learning everything I needed to learn. And so I've been coming here since 1980, 81. I love making bread. I was a pastry chef, all the fancy stuff, the chocolate, the sweets, and all that. And it was very involved. And in the right environment, it's a lot of fun. But bread, it's so simple. It's got 4 or 5 ingredients in it, depending on what you're making, and just the whole process. I get lost in the process and mixing the dough and feeling it and scaling it and shaping it and nurturing it to rise. And then when it comes out and it comes out well, it's just beautiful and delicious, and it's so gratifying. And then people come and get it, and they take their challah and they go celebrate Shabbat, with that thing that I made, and it's just meaningful. So I really love making bread, making challah.
And then you get to be part of their meal.
I get to be part of their tradition. It's really, I get this a lot. I've been coming here since 65 years. My grandmother would come and get me a cookie, and how do you close that? How do you take responsibility for that? How do you own that? You really can't. I mean, you can just perpetuate it. But people's traditions are tied up in this place. They fight about who's going to go to Diamond and get in line and wait for it to open on, Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Passover. It's really something else.
So what is the secret to bread?
The secret to bread is really time and temperature. You really have to allow your ingredients to be at the right temperature. You've got to let them rest and develop and absorb and become the stuff that it is. And you've got to let it rise. You can't rush it. You can't make a good loaf of bread in an hour. Sourdough takes days to make it really nice because of the fermentation process. Challah takes 4 hours from the time you first touch liquid to dry to coming out of the oven all shiny and egg washing and beautiful. It needs that time to rise, to knock it down, to develop the flavors, to absorb the glutens, to absorb the liquids, to meld together. So it really is time, and you've got to make sure things are happening at the right temperature, or the yeast won't activate, and then you just have a rock. So that's it, time and temperature.
Got it. And I know we talked about you sharing another recipe, which we'll get to in a second, but perhaps you will be kind enough to share your challah recipe as well?
Sure. We'll share the challah recipe.
I want to talk about cookies because I think that's like the second best sort of thing that comes out of the oven.
Cookies are amazing. The problem with cookies is they're small, and you can grab one and you can put it in your mouth. Nobody knows it's there. It disappears. And then 2 minutes later, you walk by and grab another one. And that's what I do. And it can be a problem sometimes. I have to go to a 12-step program for cookie eating because, we've got chocolate chip Rugelach. We've got rainbow cookie. Rainbow cookie is not even a cookie. It's more of a cake. It's got 3 layers of almond cake that are different colors with a raspberry jam in the middle, coated in chocolate on top and bottom, cut nice and small. So it's like bite-sized like a cookie. I eat a lot of that too. But yeah, cookies are amazing.
So what is the secret to, we talked about the secret to a good bread. What goes into making a rugelach?
So rugelach is an interesting cookie because there's no sugar in the dough. It's equal parts cream cheese, butter, and flour. There's very little salt and very little baking powder in there. And it's the fat that steams when it gets hot that creates the flakiness in the dough. So you can't over mix it. It's one of those things where you've got to let the butter if you ever made cheesecake with sour cream, like a New York cheesecake, and you have sour cream and heavy cream, if the cream cheese is too cold and hard when you add the sour cream, all you get is lumps. So you got to be careful. Things have to be the same temperature. You got to mix it short, so that you're not developing glutens or adding too much air to it. To a rugelach anyway. And then you roll it out to the right thickness, and you smear the right kind of toppings and fillings on it. And you roll them up and bake them, and then, like I like to say, eat.
And you're totally right about that cookie thing because they are small.
They are small.
And it's like eating those little, those tiny chocolates that you can get a bag of.
Yeah.
You have to eat a lot of those to make like a whole candy bar. So how many cookies do you have to eat to make it up to like a real sized cookie, right?
Yeah.
Like at least 5, right?
At least 5. Yeah. I would give everybody permission to have at least 5 rugelach to feel like they had one cookie. Yeah, sure.
Excellent. And I believe we're also going to have your wonderful rugelach recipe
absolutely
as well. So I thank you for that. What is it? And it sounds to me like the theme with baking is patience.
Is what? Patience?
Is patience?
With baking, yeah, there's a lot of patience. That's why I say time and temperature. So the time, you've got to let things do their thing. You've got to let the dough, if you need to chill the dough, if the recipe says chill for an hour, then while the dough is chilling, you chill. You don't want to push it because you won't get what you're looking for.
And I was going to ask, so while the dough is doing its thing, do you just go bake other things, or do you work on other?
Well,
what else? What gets done? Because I'm on this little cooking for productivity event where one of the best things about cooking is while it does its thing, you can do other stuff. So what do you do while being patient?
Well, in a professional setting, there's a cycle to things. So let's say in the morning, for the morning shift, they come in at 5 o'clock. We turn on the ovens. We bring everything out that's going to be baked for that day. So the bagels and the cookies that have already been made. So they've already been assembled. So we've got the Danish, we've got the Mandelbrot, we got all that's already been assembled, and then we take it and bake it for the store so that there's something for people to buy. That takes about 3.5 hours. Take a break, come back, and then the last half of the day, we prepare the doughs. So we'll make like I made short dough today for the cookies. We'll make the frozen dough for the chocolate chip Danish, the croissant dough, the Danish dough, puff pastry. We'll make the fillings, the chocolate fillings. We'll cook the fruit fillings, the cherry and the raspberry and the apricot and all that. We'll cook all those up and get those ready so that when it comes time to assemble a babka or a racetrack or a Russian coffee cake, we have all the components ready, and then it's just a matter of assembling it and then baking it. So there's lots to do. And like I tell my people, if you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean. So cleaning is always something that can be done.
Excellent. Never a dull moment in your world, I am sure.
Yeah.
So are there any other tips or words of wisdom for people for baking at home?
Yes, there's a term called a French term called mise en place, and mise en place is things in place. So before you get started, you get a recipe, it looks really good. Read through the recipe a couple of times. Understand the tools that you're going to need, and the ingredients that it's going to require in order to make this thing that looks so great in the cookbook or online or on Instagram or whatever. Make sure that you have all the ingredients together, that you've read through it a couple of times, because there's nothing worse than putting the eggs in the butter before you put the sugar, only to find out the eggs went into the butter, the sugar went in, all of that. And then you get something you're not bargaining for, or you have to throw it away and start over. So mise en place, get everything in place, all your tools, all your ingredients, get everything scaled off, measured, because you might have a bag of flour and you might think you've got 500 grams, but you might not. So you want to make sure that you get everything scaled. Just like in a cooking demo, you see all the bowls of all the things, and all they do is drop them in there because they've got an assistant. Use your kid. If you've got kids, get them to measure everything up for you. And so that, for me, is the number one. Make sure you have all the right tools. You've got all the ingredients. Everything's at the temperature it's supposed to be before you get started.
Excellent. And before we wrap, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like first of all, I feel like I've gained 5 pounds just talking about treats, which is, not nearly as fun as eating them. Is there something about baking that you wish you knew at the start of this journey?
Yeah, that it usually works out if you follow, the principles of baking. It will work out. Don't freak
Awesome.
out, right? Like, chill. It's okay. It'll be okay.
So where can people learn more about you and Diamond Bakery?
Well, you can go to diamondbakeryla.com. We've got a little brief history there. We told our extensive story to the Jewish Daily Forward a couple of years ago. I had a partner at the time, where he's not involved in the business anymore. We've been on Eater LA, so you can Google Diamond Bakery LA and learn all about it. You can go to the website. You can come in and get something and ask for Diamond Doug, and I'll come and talk to you, and I'll answer whatever questions you have.
Excellent. Love that. Well, thank you so much, Diamond Doug, for joining me today for this wonderful history of Diamond Bakery, but also the wonderful tips, especially the one about being patient and eating fewer cookies. I mean, we covered everything, I feel. So thank you. And thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And go to jewishjournal.com to get recipes and read the articles that go with each episode. And you can also learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, Bon appetit.